Hello and welcome everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you've been watching my last flights, thank you very much for giving them a watch, and I hope you'll enjoy this one too. So today, we have a new addition to ourselves here at Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. We're here in the Aerosoft Bombardier CRJ. This is the 700 variant of the CRJ. Now with this add-on you do get 4 aircraft I believe, so that's the CRJ 550, the 700, 900 and the 1000. In this one today, the CRJ 900, we are doing a American Airlines flight, or American Eagle flight. In fact, that's 5646 from Milwaukee to Ronald Reagan National Airport. We'll be taking this flight over to Washington. Now, we don't have any scenery over in Washington, it is just the base scenery, but there are a lot of built-in scenery aspects, landmarks in Washington area. You're looking at the Pentagon, the Capitol, White House, all of those good things, so I'm hoping we'll get a nice scenic landing into Washington today. Now, in this aircraft in particular, now it's a lot more hands-on than other aircraft, either freeware or payware, such as the Phoenix. A lot more hand flying, a lot more button pressing and switch toggling to do in the cockpit, which, for me, that sounds like a great thing. I know the Phoenix and aircraft like that, they are very complicated, very in-depth, but there's a lot of computer work in the background going on. Now the CRJ is very hands-on domestic aircraft, so we'll be giving that a go today. Now I've done a few flights in the background with this just to get a hang of it, a few tutorials and whatnot, so I'm hoping everything goes a bit smoothly today. From what I've seen from the weather in Washington, it's a bit cloudy and maybe IFR, so we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping an ILS into Washington that we can take, if not an RNAV approach, which will be a lot more hands-on, a bit interesting, and we'll see how that goes. Anyway, we have the flight plan loaded up. It's I think block time of just under 2 hours over to Washington. We'll be taking this, flying out of Milwaukee, and taking the coast down to Chicago, and then across mainland America, across to the East Coast. Right. We'll get ourselves jumped into the cockpit. We have a few things loaded up already and lights turned on, etc. We'll jump in and get this flight underway. Once again, thank you very much for joining along. If you like this flight, do feel free to like and subscribe. I'd like to do a lot more in the CRJ in the future. Like I said, there's a lot more variants. We can do a bit more over mainland Europe, a bit more in America. They use all across the world, in China in fact as well, so maybe do some East Asia flights. That'd be interesting. Anyway, yeah, like I said, I'll get into the cockpit and get this flight loaded up. Now here we are in the cockpit. As you can see, it looks a bit different to, for example, the Phoenix A320 in here. A bit more cramped and a whole lot less buttons. Anyway, we shall start setting up this aircraft, and I like to say I will do a more in-depth overview, maybe a tutorial of the CRJ, flight characteristics and all that lot. Maybe do some start up from cold and dark, takeoff and landing tutorials. If anyone is interested, I will be happy to give that a go, and I think it will just help me with my in general flying skills in this plane. Anyway, so as said, we have the flight plan loaded up. This plane also does come with an Aerosoft EFB system, which is great. Up top we have the flight plan. It's already imported from the OFP, which is made in SimBrief. So we are American Airlines flight 5646 from Milwaukee to Washington Ronald Reagan National Airport. Just over 600 nautical miles, and quite a simple flight plan today. We will get this all sent over to the FMS and set up over there. This EFB also comes with a performance page, so from your from your OFP you can put in passengers, cargo forward and aft, and fuel, and similar to other paper aircraft, it will calculate your V1 rotate and V2 speeds, everything like that. One thing to note is, from your performance trim and everything like that isn't set up automatically. That is something that you have to do yourself, so be aware of that if you are new to CRJ. This will all be published from the performance chart and everything calculated in here. Just this trim you will have to manually change before takeoff. That's always something to look out for. Aircraft itself, I currently have the passenger door open and cargo doors are open. You can put the guardrails up or down depending on if you have a jetway toggled, so currently they are down with the jetway toggled. If I was to put these guardrails up, then it would just be a walk-on boarding for the passengers. It does come with a ground power cart and service, ground air cart, service door, everything like that. Cabin lights especially, and aircraft states if you want to skip to ready to taxi or for startup. It's nice and easy. There is a maintenance page. I haven't touched it. I don't want to touch it. If I touch it and something goes wrong, then I have to start everything all over again. Anyway, it is there if you want to mess around with it. That is very easy to do. Charts, also integrated. Very, very useful. So I've quickly, just before this intro, put in the airports that we are going from today. So we're here at Milwaukee General Mitchell International, Kilo Mike Kilo Echo, going over to Kilo Delta Charlie Alpha. That is the Ronald Reagan National Airport in Washington. We have an alternative of Philly today. If anything changes, we'll have a look at that. But anyway, charts. As you go in, you can see that there are airport charts, departures, arrivals and approaches, reference charts for most, if not all, airports that you would be looking to fly to in the CRJ. For example, today I believe we're taking the UCRA 6 RNAV departure. So if I open that up, you can see you can move it around with your mouse as well. There's also zoom in, zoom out, scale, everything that you need. Very, very useful for a quick glance. If you haven't got Navigraph or anything like that, then this is very useful just to have within the aircraft. So for our departure today, we will be taking off from 07 right, I believe, and then just taking vectors to join perfect here. Going down south, like I said, following the lake side, and then off to Sample, and then continuing south along the lake, and then east across to Washington. Now it's just a brief overview of everything here. I believe also from the airport. Yep, there we go. We are at the, I guess that's the Delta part of the terminal. On the south side, we'll be taxiing back, most likely along Alpha to 7 right, and then taking off from there over the lake. And then I think you got all your parking spots. Yep, exactly. I keep on scrolling out because I forgot that it's only with zoom. And we are at gates Delta 56 today. Right, that's the charts there, and there's a bunch of options which you can also go through, and many pages of it, such as, for example, calibrating your throttles, calibrating your joystick if you have one. Everything in there can be done, so you can have your own indents and positions for climb and toga positions, as well as reverse. As well as there being checklists here on the farthest left hand side. Also good if you haven't got too far into tutorials or whatnot in the CRJs. It's just a nice overview to have. Anyway, I think that's a good overview of the EFB in general. Like I said, I might do a more in-depth tutorial into the aircraft in general in the future. If that's something you like, let me know down in the comments and I'll get that recorded. If not, just keep an eye on the channel in the future. It most likely will pop up. Anyway, that's all in. Flight plan is sorted. I'll have a go at putting this all into the FMS and getting us underway. So down at the FMS, there's a few things to do just to initialize everything here. So it wants us to initialize position. From there you can go from index into pos init. Today we are at Kilo Mike Kilo Echo. Airports, gate 56. I don't know if I have to put Delta before that. I most likely do. So let's go Delta 56. No, it doesn't like it. Okay, well, we will go anyway to the next page and take the GNSS reference position, copy that into the scratch pad, previous page, and paste it into set pos. As you see on the top left there, that's just turned our screen alive. Working that up, from now we can continue on. Right, so everything in terms of position is sorted. Flight plan. Now you can put this in automatically. That is completely possible to do, and then do your departures and arrivals from there. What I will do, just to save a little bit of time, is to go back to the EFP as it's imported already. It will not let me put it into the FMS directly. Okay, that is fine, so we'll have to do this manually. So we were going from Kilo Mike Kilo Echo to Kilo Delta Charlie Alpha. Do have an alternative of Philly today, so we can put that in as well. And if I just grab up my EFP, I will have to check the routing. So we're going via UCRA 6 departure, runway 07 right. Execute that. We're also going via sample, execute. And for the arrival, we are arriving via the Freedom 6 transitioning via Bucko, and we are coming into, there is an ILS packet. Yeah, we'll do the ILS 01 with vectors and execute. Right, great. Back to the flight plan. So we're going to Ukur, go down into legs, we'll see what is available in here. So we've got discontinuity after sample. So I'll have to put the rest of this in, and once this is all filled in, I'll come back to you. Right, so everything is inputted now into the FMS. All of our legs are in. It's just a case of typing them in one by one. It takes a bit of time, so I don't want to bore you all with that. But anyways, we scroll through. You can see we go through the Ukur departure, exiting that via sample, direct to Adami, direct to Otons, Aniwa, Jerry, and then into the Bucko arrival, into the approach as that goes through. There's discontinuity there, as we'll need to go through vectors to catch her in, and then into the ILS for runway 01. So in this case we can just clear that discontinuity. In fact, I'm used to it being in the Phoenix, but we'll take catcher into the scratch pad and paste it into that discontinuity, execute, and everything shall be filled out. Now I believe if we go up to the top we can do a scroll through and just make sure that everything is set. There we go. From here I have to change the formats. One click to the right, so we've got this nav head up, and then we can just click through and just make sure that there are no discontinuities. So right there, I'll just show you, this will be going down south, and then from Sampi we'll be heading east along mainland. Demi, Osens, Anewa, Jerry, and then into the arrival into Washington. A bit messy in here, I'll just zoom that in a bit and you'll see we'll go for Vectory into Hero, and then vector ourselves around to make a nice little circle into Katrin for the ILS into runway 01. Right, that's all set up. I'll get the rest of the plane set up and get ourselves pushed back and underway. So we've just been cleared to taxi. For now, if we look at our chart here at the airports, we've just been pushed back into the area between Delta and Echo, so I believe we'll go from here through Romeo, along Alpha, and then down to the start of runway 7 right. We'll hold short at Alpha 5 here, and then make our way onto runway 7 right and take off to the east across the lake and then down south again. So as we've been given our clearance, we will continue our taxi on and hold short of the runway 07 right. So we're holding short here, runway 07 right. Look up just to our right, get some landing lights on and the strobe lights turned on. Otherwise we have here the confirmation that takeoff config is okay. We can get ourselves lined up on runway 07 right and take off. So if this aircraft is a little bit twitchy as you take off, I know that the flight model I don't think is absolutely perfect, but other than that it's a very great aircraft. So I do have some curves on both my throttle, rudders, and on my joystick, so that helps a little bit with the sort of severity of the pitching and yawing that you can get from this aircraft. But I'm hoping on this takeoff I'll try and do it as gently as possible for you guys today. Right, so there we are lined up, C7 right on the asphalt. We have everything up and ready. We've got our get this turned on. We've got our nav heading and speed set on the flight director, so as soon as we get taken off we'll work out on the rest of that. Alright, let's get ourselves up to 50% power. Hold it there for a second. Heading up towards 60, we'll get ourselves into takeoff. once. V1 and rotate. Positive rate and gear is coming up. So like I said, there's no straight vector over the start of the departure, so we will get ourselves climbed up here high enough that we can take a right hand turn out across the lake and then down towards Perfect, I believe it is the first waypoint that we will be flying through. So we've increased our speed up to 290 as we're above 10,000 feet and we're just approaching that perfect waypoint. We'll continue on just past it and then actually, as we are now, switch over to nav, actually start a slight right hand turn across to the next Ozalk, however you say that waypoint. Anyway, there we need to be above 11,000, we're already up close to 16,000, which we need to be at. If I just grab up our charts once more, we can see where we're at. So closing us up, we need to be at 11,000 or above 11,000, and it's at UK that we need to be above 16,000. So I think we can, as we're almost there, we can just continue our climb. Our cruise altitude of 39,000 feet. I think we'll be reaching that just by this waypoint here in a couple of minutes, in about 20 nautical miles. So, like I said before, there's one thing about this aircraft. Once you hear that tone, you're approaching the top of your altitude, your selected altitude, you do then need to take over with the throttle and speed control, and you need to then position yourself or find a nice position of the throttle levers where you don't overspeed, you don't drop too much speed and stall, so it's very much hands-on, like I said previously. So once we reach that 39,000 feet, I'll take over the throttle and try and find a reasonable position to keep it in for the rest of our flights. Once that's done, then we're at our cruise altitude and cruising at a nice speed. We'll continue our little montage over to Washington, and as we hit the top of the descent, I'll be back and we'll start prepping the aircraft for our descent and landing in Washington. As always, if you are liking this video, do feel free to like and subscribe. I'm hoping, and I've seen from the weather, that we might get a bit of a cloudy and possibly IFR landing into Washington, so that'll be very interesting in this aircraft. But yeah, like I said, if you're liking this video, then do like and subscribe. I will be getting up possibly a tutorial of this aircraft in the near future, that as well as the Phoenix, so keep an eye out for that. Once again, thank you very much for joining along on this flight, and I hope you do enjoy it. past the top of descent. We are reducing our altitude now down to flight level 310 for the start of the arrival into Washington. If we just have a look at our chart real quick, we'll see that it's a pretty busy chart that we have to take care of today. So we'll be dropping down into Bucko to start with at flight level 310, staying at flight level 310, continue on to Darren between 270 and 310, down to a max speed of 280 knots at flight level 280 at honour, and then continue down 260, 230, 17,000, 14,000, and so on until we get down towards 6,000 at Rill, and continue our path down to Hero, and then we'll do vectors for the ILS into runway 01. So there's a lot to look at here, and a lot to manage as we drop down. As you can see, we're just starting our left-hand turn now at Bucko, so we should be going down to level 310, and in fact I will continue us down to, let's say, flight level 270, as we need to be above that at Darren, so we'll continue our descent down. There we go, continue that down. You can see here, we're actually going out a bit quick. Our arrow here should be somewhere in this blue circle, so if we go back and pitch our nose back up a little bit, we're looking for, let's say, 1.8, something like that. So we'll continue that back, taking that back down to 1.8, and this little white snowflake that you can see here, that indicates how close vertically you are to the correct descent path. So 1.8 should be good enough for now. We continue that down to flight level 270, and we can continue to put our speed back up a little bit, as I've just set it on idle for a second. Aiming for, I believe our descent is 290, but we, again, looking at our chart, we have to drop that down to 280 at honour. So we can set a descent of, call it 270 for now. Put ourselves back into the climb bracket, and that should work in our favour. Anyway, I shall continue this descent down, and as we get closer to the ILS, I'll continue this video in. Alright, enjoy this descent, and I'll see you in a bit. So there we go, we completed our rainy descent down to Washington, just passing Hero. We'll actually switch ourselves over to heading mode and turn around towards Catcher to start our ILS approach into runway 01. As it goes around, we'll continue our reduction of speeds down towards our target speed of 185. We'll have to get out some more flaps to help us along with that. I'll put in a circle here as well, just to show the 10.7 mile radius around the Ronald Reagan National Airport, just to know where we're aiming for. In case I want to start that time a little bit earlier, I could have done. Right, we're at and below 185 now in that speed. Continue down. We need to be at 2,500 or above at Catherine, so we'll jump down to 2,500. And we also have our ILS and localizer in there. So once we get closer, we can switch over to localizer view. Once that's in position, we can activate the approach and capture the glide slope, continue our approach down into Washington. So we just started our turn down now. I think I should try and get our range a little bit less, see it a bit better. Heading can continue its way around. Say 020 heading. That'll capturing pretty well. And I think if we can change the formats here, it doesn't show it very well. Okay, well we'll continue like that. We'll continue catching on the way around and then capture the glide slope for the ILS as we come into land. One last thing to do before we land as well is just to reset the landing elevation up here, so we'll turn that down. See down there it says 240, we can turn it down until it says 0, as we are landing. Essentially at 0, gone way too far, back up again. That's 160, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that should be at 0. 0, perfect, there we go. That's all set there. We've dropped below the clouds now, so I think we can turn the anti-ice off before we land. So we had some icing on the way down. Anyway, landing lights and taxi lights are set. Our speed is going way too far down, as I'm not paying attention to it. In the meantime, we can drop some more flaps and help that out a little bit. Set it back to nav. Hopefully we can capture in. In fact, we can see it to approach, as it is starting to do something very strange. Back to heading, and we'll try and capture the glide slope better this time. There we go, there's the localizer. Hopefully that'll capture better if we go on to approach mode. No, we'll keep it heading. Go back this way and drop our altitude down to 1600. Bit of a chaotic approach, I'm still getting used to CRJ, but hopefully you guys can see it's a bit of a handful to deal with. There we go, and the localizer is moving, so we can try and set that back and try and capture it again. That seems to have worked a whole lot better, I hope. Set us up on half bank just to reduce the severity of that bank. Right, so 20 degrees of flaps, we can drop down to 30. As soon as we're a bit more stabilised on this approach. And we have the missed approach up to 2200, which I can set now. There we go, glide slope is also alive, activated. So we'll continue our approach in now. In which case gear can come down and the last notch of flaps can also come down. Now we're looking for a reference of 137, so 142 for the landing speed. Put that in. Reduce that speed down. In fact, back up, because I see we've already gone past it once again. Oof, the CRJ is a lot to work with. Like I said, I've only flown a couple of flights before with this, so I'll get a lot better as time goes by, but this thing is a bit of a handful. There we go. Speed has come back, it's looking a whole lot better. I think at this point, I think we can take over. So we can disconnect from the autopilot. It's my plane, again, as I've seen on the landing, same as with the takeoff, it's best just to control your pitch with the trim. I'm trying to do that as best as I can here for a stable approach. approach here, we'll try and drop down. Although I'm not sure if these puppies are entirely correct.
400.
Get the speed back up. There we go. A bit of a headwind as well, so it's not hanging up.
300. Sink rate 200. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
An extremely hard landing, which I wasn't hoping for, but we are down in Washington. Well, I have to get used to this plane. Reversers are deployed, as are the ground spoilers. Just reducing speed down past 60, but those reversers off. Go back to manual braking and continue overall down. What's a handful of an aircraft? Well, we're at November 1, I think we can turn to the left now and exit the runway. Exited the runway, turn off the landing lights, strobe lights can come off too. Taxi lights are still on and we shall roll our way to the gates. In this case, I believe that Reagan Airlines tend to park down the far end here, so we'll try and find a reasonable gate to park at. We are just coming into position here at our parking gate. Here at Washington, so we can turn those taxi lights off. Doing a blind the marshaller down here. I'm not sure how good his directions are, as he is not lined up with the actual parking line, but I think we'll just take the parking line itself and go from there. I don't have DSX profile for this airport, but this seems good enough. Yeah, quite confused. Anyway, that'll do. Set the parking brake. And we'll cut our engines and that'll be that there. So once again, thank you everyone for joining along on this pretty hectic journey in the CRJ into Washington. Like I said, it's going to be an aircraft that I need to get a lot more used to, do a few more flights in. But we'll see them all on this channel. I'll do a few more, I've got a few more ideas lined up. Now this aircraft is served by quite a few operators across the globe, and especially in Europe and America, so we'll be doing a few flights in it. Anyway, as always, thank you once again for watching. If you do like this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. Comment down below if you've got any other ideas, if you want to see the CRJ in any more videos, please do tell me down below. And if you want to see a tutorial of how to set it up, I know I could practice my landings a bit more, so I'm happy to go through that. Yeah, so do please let me know down in the comments. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next flight.